Welcome to Healthcare Entrepreneur Academy, where we seek to educate, motivate, and inspire professionals into starting their own healthcare businesses. Now, please welcome your host, entrepreneur, healthcare practitioner, Jason Duprat.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the show. I'm super excited today because I have none other than Bob Mangat on the show. Bob is recognized as a world-class advanced business growth specialist. He is a #1 Amazon-selling best author. I actually have his book here right next to me. It's called The Automated Entrepreneur, Work Less, Make More. Bob is also a speaker, a serial entrepreneur, a husband and father, and he has over 15 years of hands-on experience growing businesses. He is the founder of both invigoMEDIA and EverGenius. EverGenius is one of the coolest softwares I've seen for medical practices, and we talk about that in this episode, and so I'm super excited. Bob, welcome to the show.
Appreciate that. Yeah. So, I mean, let's get after it.
Cool. Usually start off by just kind of going over some background information on you, sort of like your background, where you grew up, and then how you entered the entrepreneurial space.
Yeah, for sure. So, I'll start back a little bit further than maybe some people would want me to, but it's important to the overall story that I have. And I talk about that and from a marketing perspective and how stories sell, right? But for me, when I was growing up, my parents, immigrant parents, came down here with pretty much nothing. The immigrant type of story that you're kind of used to. I experienced that. We didn't have a whole lot growing up, and so my parents worked 2 to 3 jobs constantly to put food on the table. There's 3 of us. I have 2 older brothers, and one of the things that they did after they saved up a bunch of money and wanted to basically create a better life for themselves. They invested into a retail grocery store. It was like an ethnic grocery store. And so that ethnic grocery store, they put all this money into a great location and they put all this money into the fixtures and all of that kind of stuff that was inside of the retail location. But the problem that we had faced, or that, they had faced, was the fact that it was completely the wrong market. They're putting in something that was not necessary in that location or in that market, and nobody ever wanted, anything to do with it. So people that actually wanted to shop there, because it was an ethnic grocery store, that wanted to shop there, were 20, 25 minutes away. And so, initially we were gaining steam and we were growing and, everything was happening, but all somebody had to do was just open up another one over there that is closer to them. And that's kind of what they did. And we quickly saw the business go from a little bit of a profit to pretty much near bankruptcy, that almost left us homeless. And I remember sleeping in vans and sleeping in the shops and stores and that kind of thing. And it was kind of a really eye-opening point for me, because I knew right then and there, I was probably about 8 to 10 years old. I knew right then and there that I am never going to live like this, and I saw my parents do the completely opposite, which, when my parents were growing up, they're like, you can't open up a business because my business failed. And when I started to, I was 20 years old. I worked for one of the largest insurance corporations in BC. I had my Microsoft certifications, making $25 an hour. I remember 6 months into that job, I saw a guy hunched over his back, and I said, I can't do this. So I walked in and I quit, and I went back and told my dad. My dad's like, you're crazy. You pretty much had a gold mine over there, and you're crazy. You're going to go out there and you're going to fail as well. And I fought that for many, many years. And so I had the entrepreneurial bug, really right from the start. I've sold, candy bars. I've sold vacuum cleaners. I've sold telemarketing. You name it. When I was growing up, that was the norm for me. Top salesman in everything that I did. And I think, I was talking to my wife the other day, and I said, if anything ever happens to me, I said, teach my kids selling. Teach them how to sell and teach them how to market. And I think that's kind of like a taboo word. And for those of you guys that don't know me, I deal with many different medical practices across the country. I help them build, grow, and scale their companies. But I think, when I bring up sales, they like shy away. They think it's kind of like a, something that that you only see. I think they have a picture in their mind about a used car salesman, that is very, very sort of invasive in their whole process, and that it's not what I'm talking about. And so going back a little bit, I had gone through these challenges and these things that I faced, and one of the things that I remember was one of my mentors. I had gotten into the real estate business. I quit the insurance-based business. I got into the real estate business, and one of my mentors said, he says, Bob, he says, you're not in the real estate market. He says, you're not in the real estate sales business. Now, let me give you a picture. A real estate sales agent goes out and shows home, and he sells a home to a buyer every 5 years. That's the national statistic. That's the national average, right? Every 3 to 5 years, somebody will buy a new home. And so you're going out there and you're doing all this work, and you're taking one buyer out and he's going to buy, and then you have to create a whole different plan for customer acquisition. And I was struggling. I was selling real estate, and I was going out there finding a buyer, and that buyer, I would ask him for referrals and all this kind of stuff, and I didn't really have any acquisition plan. So I hired a mentor, and the mentor said to me, he says, Bob, he said, you're not in the real estate sales business. And I said, what are you talking about? That's exactly what business I'm in. And he says, no. He says, you're in the business of marketing your real estate sales business. Think about that for a second. You're in the business of marketing your real estate sales business. And some people caught on, some people didn't. I caught on. Mm-hmm. So I changed the whole process in my business to focus on not going out and working in it, to going out and driving buyers around. I actually focused on the marketing side of things. I figured, and with his help, I figured that if I can market correctly, if I can position myself as an expert, as an authority, as a celebrity almost, like in my local market, people will automatically come to me. And so I started to focus on a lot of the marketing aspect. And when I did that, our business grew from $150,000 a year to $50 million in sales. Wow. When I changed my mindset, and I said that, it's also a lot about mindset, and you know this, right? Yeah. And so having gone into the real estate business, we did very, very well. But one of the things that were some of the maybe medical practitioners on this call or whatever could probably relate to is that I was working 80 hours a week, and I had just gotten married. I had a newborn child. I have 2 now, but there was no time for family at that point in time, and so our marriage went on for about a couple of years, and then after that, we kind of split up. And it was a very difficult time for me because I thought that I was doing everything for the family. Growing up with nothing, you always overcompensate for the amount of work that you start to create, and you don't have a life. And you go back and you're like, the wife's pissed off at you, the kids don't want to talk to you. And it's like, what are you talking about? Like, don't you know I'm doing everything for you and for the family? Mm-hmm. And so that was the issue that we had. And so we kind of took some time off apart, which was the best thing for me because I was able to go back and really deal with a lot of the stuff that had gone on earlier on in my life. I had exited out of my real estate company. And then from there, me and my wife got back together. I started to invest in real estate in medical villages. And so putting commercial properties and doctors into different, specialties in these buildings, getting the cap rate up and then selling them. But as that time was happening, it was going down in the downturn of the economy. As that was happening, what was going on was these doctors weren't making the amount of money that I was requesting in terms of the lease space that I wanted. And so if I keep reducing the revenue, then what was happening is that my cap rate would go down and the building wouldn't be, sold for the amount of money that I wanted to sell it for. Mm-hmm. So basically what I did was that I started helping them out with marketing. And, long story short, going through that whole process, I've worked with, big companies, Remax, Kia, the systems that I talk about and the processes that I talk about use in any business. I was able to scale our agency from, $10,000 a month to $400,000 a month, pretty much effortlessly. When you understand customer acquisition, when you understand lifetime value, when you understand positioning, authority, and creating celebrity status, when you understand those things, it's very easy to turn a business around. You just got to understand those. And hopefully we can talk a little bit about that today. So, long story short, that's kind of where I'm at today. I speak and train across the country at a lot of the conferences out there. I work with cash-based businesses and insurance-based businesses, and a combination, a hybrid of both.
Okay, yeah, cool. That's a really interesting background. So from real estate to a real estate exit to it was investing in real estate. Pretty cool transition there. So essentially my question was sort of how did you transition into creating your next two businesses that you're working in now? Was that a direct result of solving the need of the physicians and the practice owners that were renting from you?
Yeah, I mean, it was just more of a consulting basis. So a lot of people that I knew started to reach out to me and saying, "Hey, Bob, whatever you did for that business, can you help me over here?" And then I started to one of my buddies from Toronto moved down to Dallas, and he runs a great multi-clinic location out there and integrative pain practices. When I was out there, he's like, "Why don't you just stay here and help me fix some processes and systems inside my business?" And so I sat there for about a week, and I learned about everything about the equipment, decompression equipment, like lasers, everything. I sat beside receptionists. I sat beside office managers. I sat beside doctors, going into their literally every single process that is inside their businesses. And I started to create some of my own. And I kind of quickly realized, hey, this, there's really not a whole lot going on. There's a lot of kind of, throw some spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks, right? Yeah. And I think a lot of businesses are set up that way because, let's face it, when my parents got into their, business, it was like they were passionate about serving a certain type of community, but, an advertiser would come to them and saying, "Hey, listen, you should put a newspaper ad here," and then they'd fork out the money and they'd put it in, but they would never track it. They would never understand, buyer psychology or anything like that to understand, hey, why aren't people actually coming into my business? And so then you go to another, and then they say that, well, that didn't work. And then they go to the other marketer or whatever it may be, and they'll put money with them, and then they'll say, well, why didn't that work? And the reality of it is it's not gonna work because you haven't focused on your positioning, your branding, and I want to make two distinctions very, very clear. Like there's a difference between, branding and positioning, right? Branding is basically something that you guys see like, Nike or, the Golden Arches. When you see those, you don't really have to actually even read the words or see what it's actually about. Those guys have, billions of dollars that every year they're pumping in so that you can recognize a swoosh. That's a brand, right? That's branded. And really what we try to do is we try to create, a brand or a position that you are the expert based on certain things that you do to educate the general public. Right, just putting out an ad and saying, in your case, it's a ketamine clinic. Just putting out an ad saying I'm a ketamine, that's not going to do any good, right? You have to basically educate the public as to what it is, how it's going to benefit you, and what the pain points. You see, the reason why I sat inside these offices is because I understand in most cases the pain points before my doctors ever know what their pain is. Yeah. Right? I can call it out so fast because, in fact, that's part of my process now. I actually fly out. I flew 150,000 miles last year going inside of clinics and working with them, just sitting there. And I know there's a common denominator with every single clinic that's out there. Their systems and processes are broke. Yep. And I think that's, and it's not just about the systems and processes for your front desk. I'm talking about what generates you revenue. The systems and processes for marketing, your positioning, your authority, your brand building, all of that kind of stuff is just haphazard. And so for invigoMEDIA and EverGenius, which is a digital media company, but we also work on a lot of offline stuff. And then EverGenius was like, I built this digital media company to serve that need. And then I was like, well, we're still monitoring and managing websites, or still managing leads or prospects in spreadsheets, or, even worse, sticky notes. There's been so many times where I've gone into a clinic and there's sticky notes popped on all over. And so I built the software. In fact, I've invested close to $500,000 into a software to serve the community so that they can make things a lot easier for them. And it's not just another software. It's actually a patient communication and retention tool. And so, so that's kind of how I've kind of bridged both of those in order for us to serve the community.
Yeah, great advice there. When you're talking about sort of some of the mistakes or pain points that clinics are facing, can you give a few more examples of what those might be? And then I've actually played around with your EverGenius product. I think it's absolutely awesome. It's really good quality. Like everything's all in one spot. I love it. And I know that that's designed to address some of those problems, but maybe you can go into a little bit more detail about the typical problems that the patients have and how they're kind of losing leads and things like that.
Yeah, so the national sales, and I'm going to talk about sales because you can call it whatever you want, but at the end of the day, you're selling something, right? I mean, that's the truth. And so I'm gonna address it as sales. And so the National Sales Executive Association says that from 8th to the 12th contact is where 50 to 70% of the business is actually done, right? So let me give you an example. I'll give you a really, a recent example. My dad was looking for a car, okay, and so was I. So I go into a dealership. I actually take it in to go fix the brakes. I walk around the dealership. I see a car that I like. I said, leave that one up there. I'm going to take this one, okay? That's the type of buyer that I am, right? I want full load. I want everything. I want the best of the best. I don't care if it's more price, that means it's better. And I'll talk about pricing and packaging strategies in a second. My dad, however, is one of those guys that's very cautious. He's old school. He's got money. He bought, a very expensive 6-figure vehicle. However, when he went into the dealership, so the first dealership that I went to, I help him make, certain decisions, and I go there and I'm like, no, don't buy that one or buy this one. So me and him went into the dealership. The first vehicle that he saw was the one that he ended up buying 6 months later. But guess what? He did not buy it from the same person that actually showed it to him first. Why was that? The reason being is because in sales or in processes and prospecting or systems, the problem is that most people have this buy or die mentality. They get a call and somebody's requiring information, and if they don't do business with them at that point in time, they forget about it, okay? It does not mean that that person is not interested. They just mean at that point in time that they're not ready to take the next step. Buyers buy differently. You buy differently than I. The people that are on this call buy differently, okay? Some pull the trigger like I do in a day, right? If I see something, I've analyzed it all, I can do the numbers in my head, I'll buy it, right? My brother's differently. He'll take a little bit longer. He's more cautious, right? My dad is a little bit long. So you have to understand buyer psychology and how it works. But, I talk about the 3% versus the 97%. And the 3% are ready to do business now. I'm the 3%. The 97% aren't. And so when I create marketing plans and programs and systems, I create it based on the 97%. I don't care about the 3%. When you run an ad in your local newspaper, when you're saying, you know what, pick up the phone and call us, you're going after the 3%. So you might spend $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 on an ad, but you're only going to get 3%. Those advertisements, whether it be on Facebook, whether it be on Google, whether it be on a local newspaper, those advertisements you must gear it where you're building credibility and authority and celebrity-like status, and I'll talk about that over time. Because the more that you follow up, the more that you provide good information to a person, the more that you let them do, you let them think about whether or not this guy is the pro or not, they can make that decision, and over time they will pull the trigger and they will remember you. So creating a follow-up system that's 12, if we know that the statistics are, from the 8th to the 12th contact, then maybe we should create a 12-step follow-up sequence, right? Mm-hmm. Picking up the phone and calling them a couple of times, maybe sending them an ebook, maybe sending them a newsletter, maybe sending them an email with a video about you talking about what your product or service is, right? Just doing that will separate you from everybody else.
Yeah, definitely. When you're creating those sort of automated follow-up sequences, or are they even automated? You didn't even specify, but some of them I guess probably can be. Some maybe more personal. When you're creating those, what's your main objective? You're not I'm guessing that you're probably not just pushing out here. I'm having a discount. Buy now, buy now, buy now, buy now. It's way more than that, right? I'm sure that's what you're doing. If you could elaborate on that a bit.
Exactly. So the thing is that buyers, like I said, buyers are, and it's a lot of it is automated, right? And that's what I call my book that, is on Amazon is called The Automated Entrepreneur. I work maybe 5 to 10 hours a week in my business, but yet, we do a tremendous amount of revenue every single year. So the reason why I do it is I create automated marketing systems, right? I send them a text message automatically when they sign up for a lead or when they go to my website. They get a text message. My salesperson will follow up with a phone call, and then an email goes out. I actually have a 10-step video campaign that will take you and guide you through all of these things that I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. And the benefit to that is that I never ever say, buy my stuff. Yeah. I want to educate you, and I want you to make that decision whether or not you feel that I'm the guy for the job. And when I do that, I become what? In your mind, an expert, right? Because I'm not sitting there picking up the phone and calling you saying, Jason, do business with Jason. I'm not doing that. I'm letting you make the decision yourself. And when you come to me now, I'm in the driver's seat. I can say, well, you came to me, I didn't come to you.
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, that makes perfectly good sense. And you had mentioned creating tremendous revenue. And I don't know if everybody can see those plaques behind you on the wall there, but those are pretty impressive. Those 2 plaques that you guys are seeing on the right. Let me just change the camera view. Yeah, there we go. So it's just showing you 2 plaques on the wall there. Those are the 2 comma clubs from ClickFunnels, right? So you've created funnels that in sales that have generated $1 million, and each one of those awards represents $1 million in revenue. So that's pretty impressive there. Yeah.
Yeah, the thing with that is that the revenue was generated through, the first one took 8 months of grinding it hard, right? And so you have to understand this, is that when you create a real good campaign, then it takes a little bit of time to fire on all cylinders. But the second one, I did it in 3.5 months. Why? Because I figured out the whole process.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. And so sometimes we go in and maybe we hire a marketing company, or maybe we hire somebody, and you know what you're doing is you're running ads. And so they go out and they'll run a Facebook ad, but it's not a campaign. A Facebook ad or a Google ad or a newspaper ad is not a campaign. If you go through my processes, and one of the ones that you can go through, just understand what I'm trying to do, and from the buyer psychology side of things, it's sevenfigureclinic.com. But when you go there, you will see that this is a complete campaign, right? Email sequences, case studies, everything is geared and designed for that, right? Yeah. So, and then you'll get text messages from us. You'll get an email, like everything is kind of designed. But that design happens when you test, when you track, when you tweak. And usually in the 8th to the 12th month is where you can see major gains. Sometimes sooner than that.
Yep. Awesome. Yeah. Super valuable advice there. So when it comes to sort of the content that you're putting in these emails and videos, how would you say, the importance of text versus video versus photos, and sort of what maybe examples of what might be included in some of these follow-up sequences that you're doing?
Yeah, so I talk about multi-channel communication as one of the reasons why I built EverGenius, is to hit people up completely separate. If you pick up the phone and you call me, I won't answer, right? And my wife will call me, and sometimes I don't answer. How many times you're like, what does she do? Why is she calling me? Like, can't she just text me, right? Like, that's the truth. Like, that's how people are responding these days. And so some people like a phone call. Some of my doctors that I deal with are like, don't text me, just pick up the phone and call me. I'm old school. You see, people want to be communicated the way that they want to be communicated, but you don't know until you actually try every form of communication what works. And so one of my doctors, who's not a doctor anymore, well, he is a doctor, but he actually, sold his practice and went on, and he teaches, 15, 20,000 people at events and speaks all across the world. When he was doing his business, he's a chiropractor. When he was doing his business, I said, Dr. Jim Bob, you know what? Nobody wants to read what you're saying. They want to hear what you're saying. And I've had many conversations with him. He's such a fantastic individual. He's so, speaks great. And I said, people want to hear that. People want to see you say it. And he built an amazing following in just a year's time of all these people, to the point where he was able to remove himself out of the practice, sell it, or, close it, whatever it is, and, create a life for himself and a family that, he wouldn't, dream of. And I think that's one of the big things is with today's day and age and the internet and everything that's going on, you have the opportunity to share your message and get it out there. In whatever communication channel that you want.
When it comes to doing Facebook ads, is there any advice or sort of stepping points or pitfalls or anything that you would say people get caught up in when they're trying to run Facebook ads for their practice? Or
yeah, I think number one is they don't test enough. Like running a $25 ad is not going to give you the data that you want to be able to understand what it. So if you're going to embark on this, then there's some testing that needs to be done and involved with. The other thing is focusing on one area. I always talk about this, a home, when you build a home, and I don't know if you've ever built a home, but I've built many of them. When you build a home that's built on, you've got 4 pillars. Let's say it's just a basic, right? You got 4 pillars, and then you have all these reinforcements in between, right? And so think about this. This is your marketing program, right? This is your business. This is your marketing program. I run a newspaper ad. It's built on this. I run a Facebook ad. It's built on this. And eventually, this is a very, very rocky situation. Okay. And so eventually, if this doesn't work, what happens? It crumbles. And then you're crawling up trying to rebuild it. You see, when I build things, I build 1, I build 2, I build 3, I build 4, and I build 5 with a bunch of different reinforcements. So it can be Google, Bing, Yahoo, Facebook, retargeting, all of those things. I put that into play, and that's how you grow, exponentially, is by doing multiple things, multiple different ways, and testing and tracking and tweaking. And you really need an expert that's going to help you create great campaigns, not just ads. So if you're embarking in Facebook ads, there's a lot of people that have lost their shirt on it and just said, it doesn't work for me. It's not that it doesn't work. It works. It works. You're just not doing it right, and your expectations aren't set there. The other thing is that there's many, we call it, I just wrote an article about many marketing charlatans where they're going out and they're actually newbies. They've taken a course on the weekend and saying, I'll get you X amount of leads, or I'll get you X amount of opportunities. Opportunities are those that you can get for $2 or $3 a pop on Facebook. And then they're saying, well, you're not closing. It's not my fault. It's yours. Right?
Yep.
And so I say that's a bunch of BS, because when I work with them, I say, listen, we're going to figure out what that process is from start to finish. And I think that that's a very, very important part, because you'll see these ads and you'll see these things happening. I know, because I teach agencies all across the world, and I know exactly the types of quality that's out there right now. And I got to say that I'm ashamed to say that it's getting worse and worse and worse. So do your homework.
Yeah, exactly. There's too many of these crappy online courses that people can enroll in. They'll enroll in one and then try to market them. So how do you spot those people? If somebody was shopping for a digital marketer or somebody to help them with their marketing, how would you spot the good people versus the newbies and the not so good people?
Just ask them for their portfolio. You can go on many sites, like, where are you located, right? Who's on your team members, and what do your team members do? If you call yourself an agency, otherwise just call yourself a freelancer. If you call yourself an agent, and where are they located? My team sits right beside me, next door, right? Yeah. So it's about quality also. And a lot of the times they'll just take it and then they'll outsource it to somebody else, and then they'll charge you an upfront fee. And so I'm not afraid to call that out, because I think the really, really good agencies are the ones that actually take the time and effort about creating systems in their own business, right? So the other thing that I always talk about is that I never talk about theory. I talk about what I do today. And so if I'm doing it in my business, I'm going to do it for your business. And many of them won't have the ability to do that. They'll talk about growing your business. How many businesses have you grown?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Tell me about your revenues. Tell me about your business.
And tracking the data too, right? That's super important. Like, some of these agencies will be running ads for you, charging you pretty substantial monthly fees, and they never come back with a report to give you any sort of data on the improvements. Everything to be data driven.
Yeah, for sure. And transparency is huge, and it's important.
Yep. So when it comes to like practitioners who are maybe opening up a new clinic and they're working on their pricing strategies, what advice would you have for them there? There's two different schools of thought. You come in, you undercut everybody and hope you succeed that way, or you come in, the other opposite end would be coming at the high end of the spectrum and just deliver outstanding service and excel that way. What would you advise somebody?
Yeah. So there's, like you said, there's two ends of the spectrum, right? The first one is the undercutters, the price gougers. Those are the ones that we can do that. That's like when you, in my opinion, that's like when you don't know anything about marketing. You're just like, I see that guy down the street, I'm gonna drop it down $10 and that's it, right? And I don't necessarily agree with that. I've not been a very big fan of that. I actually have a system, my real estate system, and I've transferred it into my medical marketing systems. It's called Less Clients, More Money. Mm-hmm. So if you deal with somebody like myself, right? Like my dad, he's old school. He's gonna no, how much is it? He doesn't care about the quality. He doesn't care about any of that. He's just like, if you're the lowest price, I'm gonna go with you, right? Whereas me is like, I don't want to wait in line. I buy the VIP tickets at the shows all the time, and there are certain things that type of buyer wants, right? And so for me, I'd like to focus on buyers like myself and have those same characteristics. And in fact, every time I go into a clinic, the first thing I say without even knowing the prices, I say charge 30% more. And let me give you an example. And let me tell you why. Because if you outprice the market, if there's a guy that charges $100, and then there's a person that charges $100 or $95, and then there's a person that charges $175, your automatic thought is going to say, I wonder what he does for $175 that those guys don't do.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right? And so you choose how you want to do. Do you want volume? Do you want to go after people, on volume? And then what is your after sales process? Meaning, I'll give you an example. There's a lot of people running out offers and stuff like that. Get this for $30, get this, come in, we'll do a free consultation with you and that kind of thing, right? And so what you want to try to do is when you get them in, like, what are your back end offers, right? But the problems that I had, I actually just came back from Louisiana, and these guys couldn't close. They were getting new consultations, they were getting new offers and everything like that in their stem cell business, regenerative medicine. And he's an orthopedic doctor. He does surgeries and then he does, stem cells. But one of the things that he couldn't do is close. So I sat in there in his office and I sat in closing consultations. And it was massively chaotic. And I said to him, the big thing is that what you're doing is all wrong. You need to take away and just deliver what that person came in here from before. So think about this. If I've got a shoulder injury, which I do, and if I got a shoulder injury and I'm coming in to come see you, Jason, and you say to me, okay, I can fix that shoulder, but I also got this other program that will help you with your hip or your knee, or I can do some Botox on you too and give you a priceless service. I'm like, man, this guy, I just came in for my shoulder, And that's what they were doing. They're like, oh, do you want this? Do you want this? Do you want this? So the main thing is that deliver on the service that they came in them for. Because if you deliver on that service, the back end of the funnel is about referrals and reselling them. I have to prove to you, and you have to prove to me and earn my business. And once you have, I'll buy anything from you. Mm-hmm. Deliver on that service. So going back to the pricing and packaging strategy, that's what I do is I just price it a lot higher, and I choose to deal with less people, but I always end up at the end of the day, the balance sheet looks a lot greater than, many people that just, going out and trying to, sell a bunch of stuff to a bunch of people.
Yeah. I totally agree with you there too. I see a lot of people going into the market, undercutting everybody, but they don't understand the long-term consequences of that, because at some sort of critical point, the volume of patients gets to be so high, you have to hire more staff and have more overhead in order to handle it. And then if your margins are already low, and you're going to be crimping those even more to try and fulfill that service, it's a losing proposition in the long run. Not too many people win that race to the bottom game. And,
and eventually, because people don't understand the marketing side of things or positioning and authority, like you have to justify why you're charging $175, right? A guy like me is going to ask question, why should I pay you that much? You know, what really is it? You know, from education to all those things, the follow-up sequence is so important. You know, that's what's going to build the credibility. So when you actually pitch them on a service that is 50% higher than your competitor or so-called competitor, that they're not going to flinch at it because they've been hearing from you all this time and you've been teaching them and training them and showing them. Whereas the other guy is just having the buy or die mentality. It makes a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We're kind of winding down here, and I don't want to take up too much of your time and be respectful of our 45-minute limit. But if there's any sort of last-minute advice, words of wisdom that you could give to anybody, and then I kind of want to get in and talk a little bit about your software in a little bit more detail on your services.
Sure, yeah. Just do your homework. You know, like look at what it is. Number one is create your target market, who you're going after. Pricing and packaging strategies are so important because that will dictate who you want to go after. I talk about, you know, three things: message, market, and media. Very quickly, the message that you're, you know, trying to get out there with your audience. The market, who are you? Who is that market? Is that message match that market? And then going after the media. So is that market with that message, are they best suited to go in newspaper? Are they best suited to go on Google? Or are they best suited to go on Facebook? Most people just say, I'm going to go after media, and then they'll create everything else, and that's the wrong way to go. So sit down and create your message to market match.
Yeah, awesome advice. Yeah. So real quick, we've got about 5 minutes left. I think your software is just so awesome that I really wanted to share it with anybody who and let you provide some more details for anybody who might be interested, because it really is like an all-in-one package. It handles everything, and I'll let you kind of explain a little bit more about the EverGenius software. And then for those that, I guess that's for more of the do-it-yourselfer, and then you have a full-service digital marketing agency as well too, right?
Yeah. So if you go to evergenius.com, it's absolutely free. I built it for you guys to be able to use it and communicate with your patients. The only thing that you have to do is you have to pay for your text messaging and that kind of thing, but there's no requirement to do that. You can go in there and you can send massive emails to anybody that you want to your whole patient list. So some of you guys might be using MailChimp or Constant Contact or anything like that. But it'll also give you a tool to understand your marketing, right? To really understand what your patients are doing or your prospects, and gauge, like, even if your marketing company is doing, you know, what they're supposed to be doing. And so go there, you know, evergenius.com. It's absolutely free. There's no obligation whatsoever. And I've created it like that because I really wanted to get this in your guys' hands because I think it's necessary. So that's, you know, that's EverGenius. You can go in there and play it around. You can build websites in there. You can do whatever you need to do. You may, if you don't have a technical background, then you may want to reach out to us for support. And then for our digital agency is you can go to bobmangat.com. You can read a lot about me and what we do and who we served, or invigoMEDIA.com, which is our digital media agency. But you know, that's more of a full service type of ad, content, pricing, packaging, consulting, that kind of thing, where we go in and really kind of change quite a bit of, not change, but just kind of, I always say I go in and plug leaks. So there's leaks in there, I go in and I plug them, and then we exponentially increase the revenues from there.
Awesome. One thing I wanted to ask you about is the Honest Doctor, and maybe you could talk about that. I thought that was a really cool feature of the software. Kind of how does that work? And did you create that software, or was that created by?
I did, yeah. So everything that I created it by myself based on the experiences that I've had going inside of clinics. So it wasn't something where, like, I'm a marketer, I'm not a programmer. I have those people that do it. And so when I was going inside of clinics, I told you I flew 150,000 miles last year. I started to see like the different programs and things that are needed. So Honest Doctor came out of pure necessity of like getting the best of the best out there and promoting them and getting the reviews from our clients. So we have a reputation process. So if you book an appointment inside of EverGenius, it'll not only follow up with them automatically, but after they're done, it'll ask them for their feedback on whether or not they had a good experience. And if they had a good experience, then we'll push it out to all of the different profiles across the web, like Google, Facebook, all the areas that are hosting all of your reviews. And if they didn't have a good experience, then we're going to send you a text message saying, hey, this person's really pissed off. You should contact them because they're probably going to go out there and start talking about you, And so it also monitors your reputation, which I think is important. I mean, doctors are being rated like restaurants these days, and
yeah,
it's important.
Yeah, that's an awesome feature. I think that was a great idea. Yeah. Awesome that you do that. Just like that's why you're so successful. You find all the problems and you fix them. So that's awesome. It's
just analyzing. You just got to go in and analyze and look at the business. And most of you guys already know where the pain points are, and it's probably been sitting there for a long time. It's like, man, I can't get this Facebook ad to work, and you're just jumping from Facebook ad guys to ad guys. It's because you don't have a campaign. A really good campaign. Don't mistake an ad from a campaign. It's not it.
Yep. Makes perfectly good sense. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge here. Super valuable information. I really appreciate you taking the time to do that. And so I'm going to end this call now. If you guys want to find out more about Bob and his services, there's sevenfigureclinic.com, bobmangat.com, and then you can go to evergenius.com.
Yeah.
All three of those are good places. So
cool.
Thanks again, Bob. I'm gonna end the live, and then I'll just chat with you for a few seconds after.
For sure.
Thanks.
Awesome.